Coming up on Money Talks America, how the racing industry is doing since the economy hit the brakes, what NASCAR is doing to keep the fans coming back, and why this recession has revealed Florida's own Ponzi scheme. It's time for Money Talks America. Welcome to Money Talks America. I'm Snaith, Director of the Institute for Economic Competitiveness in the College of Business Administration at the University of Central Florida, and your host for Money Talks America. Mark your calendars. I'm predicting the United States will come out of this recession in the fourth quarter of this year. In Florida, I don't think we'll see recovery, however, until the second quarter of 2010. Why the big difference? Well, Florida's dealing with a perfect storm in economic terms. The stock market bust, along with the housing and credit crisis, have made things worse in the Sunshine State than in other parts of the country. Money Talks America correspondent Ed Highland joins us now with a closer look at the housing numbers. Ed?
Sean, while the housing crisis hasn't exactly risen from the dead, the numbers would indicate the rigor mortis has eased a bit. The Institute for Economic Competitiveness is still forecasting housing starts to hit their nadir here in the second quarter of 2009. We believe starts will be just 13% of what they were at the peak of the housing boom.
It was a free fall to the bottom, and the process will play itself out over the next several years as building slowly reaccelerates. Surviving builders will be cautious after the painful housing bust. One of the hardest hit states is Florida, where sales have dramatically declined from the peak of the boom, and median prices have plummeted. But the glimmer of good news is that prices have dropped so much that sales are now picking up. The charts show a market above the 12-month moving average in Florida for 8 of the past 11 months, this according to the Florida Association of Realtors. Even the down months of 2009 have been above their low mark set a year ago. Prices have fallen substantially. In many parts of the state, prices have dropped below replacement costs. This phenomenon is expected to be short-run in nature and reflects the large number of distressed properties, foreclosures, and short sales. We are likely seeing an overshoot of prices on the way down, as we saw them overshoot at the top of the cycle.
And Sean, I know you're crunching a lot of numbers getting ready for the June forecast.
That's right. Thanks, Ed. I want to share more details from my quarterly forecast with you now. Florida's crushing job losses continue to accumulate until the second quarter of 2010. There are bright spots, however. I expect the education and health services sector to grow by 2.5% and the professional and business services sector to grow by 4%, both over the 2009 to 2012 timeframe. When we come back, it's time to hit the economic track for one of the most popular spectator sports in America, one that is shifting gears to deal with this economic downdraft.
Went to the fortune teller, had my fortune read. I didn't know what to tell her. I had a dizzy feeling in my head.
Welcome back. With the economy running on fumes, we wanted to take a look at how the recession is impacting the racing industry. So we brought in an expert. Buddy Pittman joins us now. Buddy has been covering NASCAR for more than 35 years. Buddy, how has the recession affected the racing industry?
Well, Sean, you know, NASCAR and corporate sponsorships do go hand in hand, and NASCAR has grown to the point where now it is second only to the NFL as far as most watched sports. The action on the track, of course, a big part of the reason, but the action off the track in boardrooms all across corporate America have helped fuel that growth as well. NASCAR has more Fortune 500 companies involved than any other sport. That's the good news. The bad news is that when corporate America suffers, so does NASCAR. Although NASCAR as an entity and sanctioning body is still very strong, the tough economic times have still had a far-reaching effect on the sport.
In tough times like these, strong people tighten their belts, put a little extra zip in their step, and focus on the things they do best. In our sport, that's racing.
The biggest effect is being seen in the individual race teams, as close to 1,500 people in the racing industry have lost their jobs over the past 5 months. Team layoffs, team mergers, teams shutting the doors altogether. Some teams having to make tough decisions in order to simply survive.
The racer in you wants to spend whatever it takes to go fast. The businessman in you makes you want to spend however little you can to stay alive.
The bottom line, the money. Shannon Phillips is expecting. Her husband is looking for a job. He was laid off when DEI and Ganassi Racing merged last November.
It's very scary. Not the time that you want to be bringing a baby into the world.
NASCAR recently helped organize a job fair in the Charlotte, North Carolina area to try and help folks find other work in the industry. But most are realizing that might not happen.
I have to go to a different career.
Looking for the next turn around the corner.
Cars and drivers covered in sponsors' logos. That's another area where the teams and the sport is feeling the pinch. Sport versus business. It's a tough give and take.
To make it through the next couple of years is going to be harder than ever for the race teams and for the sponsors.
Teams that are out looking for sponsors are fighting not only the whole idea of convincing somebody to write a check that's got 2 commas and a bunch of zeros in it, they're doing it at a time where nobody really wants to do that.
Another aspect of the economic crunch is the fans. Fewer dollars to spend on tickets and souvenirs. That means the tracks are facing the test of trying to make their events more affordable. But unfortunately, at least for the time being, traditional race sellouts will be a thing of the past. NASCAR's chairman, however, is confident that his sport will be able to weather this economic storm.
We've been in business over 60 years. So this is a business model and a sport that will endure.
Well, NASCAR's been around for a long time, 60 years. They've survived some bumps before, and they'll survive this one as well.
You've been covering the industry for decades, buddy. How has NASCAR managed downturns in the past?
Well, their ties to corporate America are very deep, and corporate America likes being tied to NASCAR because of the benefits and the exposure that they get from that. So that's one of the last avenues that they abandon when they hit a downturn with the economy. NASCAR in itself is kind of one of those sports that kind of falls 2 years behind the curve as far as a downslope in the economy. When the economy starts to bottom out and come back up, NASCAR is just starting to downslide, and they kind of meet in the middle. So NASCAR never really feels that full bottom effect. They just kind of meet in the middle and come back up as the economy comes back up.
So they go down, but not as deep as the rest of the
Exactly,
economy.
yes.
Great. Buddy, can you stay with us? I'd like to get your reaction to this next interview.
Okay.
The fans are feeling it, crews are feeling it, but it's the racing tracks that have to deal with it. I recently had a chance to sit down with Robin Bragg, president of the Daytona International Speedway, where executives are coming up with their own stimulus plans to fill the seats. Robin, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thanks for coming to the World Center of Racing.
It's great to be here. The country's in the midst of one of the most severe recessions we've seen in decades, quite frankly. How is it impacting racing and in particular the Speedway here in Daytona?
Well, we're owned by the International Speedway Corporation, a publicly traded company. We have 12 racetracks across the country. And the short answer is we're seeing between 15 and 20% decline across the board, whether that's ticket sales or corporate sponsorship or food and beverage or merchandise. It's between 15 and 20%, which, as you probably just read recently, I think Universal's at those same numbers, and Disney has released some numbers too. So it's hitting us hard, but we're here and we can adjust.
Good. When did it begin? When did you start to notice that things were slipping? Because here in Florida, with the housing market, what happened there? We started to see the economy go into recession essentially before the rest of the country followed. Did you notice it right away, or did it take a while to affect your business?
You know, we were kind of tricked. We had the 50th running of the Daytona 500 in 2008. a very celebratory event. Sold out sooner than we ever have in the past, had our biggest numbers, record sales for everything. And so we had some momentum going off of February 2008. And we really, as we sent out our renewals, they started to come back a little slower than they had in the past. And that's not real unusual, the fact that we have so many races in Florida. With Homestead, we own that racetrack as well. But and then it's followed by Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. It's kind of hard to get people to spend money on race tickets at that time, coming off a long season. But usually the first week in January, we're very busy, and we weren't. We noticed at the Miami Dolphins had a playoff game. And they hadn't had a playoff game in a long time, and they had empty seats, an NFL team. We saw Disney drop prices, and we started calling our fans, and they're like, you know what? We're probably not going to be able to make it this year. So I would tell you that we should have recognized it sooner, but it was really November, December when we started waking up and really being concerned about our 2009 event.
Right. So it was masked by the special events, and,
Right.
and you
Exactly.
didn't quite see it happening. Now, a lot of companies across the nation that target consumer markets have done things to address the anxiety, the angst that's part and parcel of a recession as severe as this one. For example, a lot of the automotive companies are offering reassurances and insurance that if you lose your job, we'll make payments for you. What has the Speedway done, and have you done anything to reach out to the consumer in this particularly difficult environment?
Sure. Well, immediately back in January, we dropped ticket prices. We went from $99 to $55. That got the phones ringing, which was a blessing, because if we can get them on the phone, we can start explaining to them the other options. And the other options are, as you mentioned, payment plans. We have easy payment plans for our race guests, and that's something that we hadn't offered in the past, but it's been happening for Major League Baseball and other sports venues. So we have payment plans, lowered ticket prices. We lowered our merchandise, our T-shirt and hat prices. We lowered the cost of a hot dog or a Coca-Cola, for example. So all those things collectively really helped us catch up. We didn't finish with a sellout. We finished with a full house of, some 200,000 plus people here. It is Daytona. So it's the Super Bowl of the event. So I'm in a little better position than some of our other tracks, where Martinsville, Virginia, Richmond. We have a track in Michigan where there's very high unemployment, just outside of Detroit. So I'm a little more fortunate, and the fact that we're here in Central Florida with the beaches and a lot of other. We've got a lot to sell here, so I'm not going to cry poor too much, because we're fortunate where we're at and who we are.
But those are significant reductions in ticket prices. Do you have any idea when the last time ticket prices were that low?
1990, somewhere in the 1990s.
Oh,
so it's been a long time, and our race guests reacted. We sold 4,000 of those tickets almost immediately. We increased and found some more tickets, went to 6,000 tickets that sold. We're going to keep doing it. Our economists on staff are telling us first quarter of 2010 before we'll see any recovery, and I know that's just some forward thinking on our part, but so we're preparing for that in the long run.
Is it going to be a tough transition? I mean, all recessions give way to the next expansion. You've made these dramatic cuts in prices of not only tickets but associated products that generate revenue for the company. How difficult is it going to be to raise those prices back up once the economy picks up? Is there concern that there will be some resentment on behalf of racing fans? And how do you approach that whole issue? And again, this is looking forward.
We were pretty proud of our seats here, and obviously we built, as you can see here, 110,000 on the front stretch, and we've got 68,000 on the back stretch, and it was really built, we built the church for Easter Sunday, so to speak. So the fact that we have that much capacity and our prices were higher because we are Daytona 500, we are going to have to do some real soul searching about moving those prices back up. I think you'll see us try and maintain a better price for our seats that people want to be more affordable for themselves. So we're going to do what the marketplace demands and build our needs back up. But you're right, it's probably going to be some less expensive seats here for a while.
Okay. So you've done some things to address the fans and attendance. Another aspect of the recession I think that's affected your business has been on the sponsors, the advertising side. Have you seen significant declines in advertising revenue? If so, what have you done, if anything, to address it?
Oh yeah, well we'll start with our most prized sponsors were the automobile industries. So for us to lose the major support that the automobile industry did, while we still have GM on site and they are the official car of our facility, their package has gone way backwards, and we accept that. The hospitality, for example, was an important part of they're bringing their dealerships or future purchasers of cars to races. That's gone virtually away. And we're seeing that across the board. Again, 15 to 20% cut back by corporations. Again, we, Daytona, are in a pretty unique position. We're the first race of the year, the Super Bowl of the event, of the sport. So if you're going to be a corporation and be anywhere near NASCAR, it's likely you're going to be here at Daytona to unveil your marketing strategies or your new driver or your new paint scheme or showcase it to your customers. So we're fortunate, again, because we are Daytona, but we are seeing some of our other tracks suffer even worse because a lot of companies are spending a bulk of their marketing dollars up front in the season at Daytona.
Have you had to lower prices for advertisers in some instances to get them to continue to be sponsors? Or
we were at capacity on our sponsorships. Believe it or not, I know this is probably nobody will believe this if you ever go to a NASCAR race, but we were trying to keep our number of sponsors at about 10 or 11. Just so we can avoid clutter, if you can believe it, if anybody thinks there's
hard
no,
to tell from
yeah,
the
hard to tell, right.
the
So
drivers.
we're in great shape, again, because of it being the Daytona marks that are so valuable. I don't know if you had read recently, Forbes magazine ranked the Daytona mark as the fourth most valuable trademark in sports, behind the Olympics, World Cup soccer, and Super Bowl. So we understand that we have a very valuable trademark, and we haven't dropped pricing so much on sponsorships, but we have changed their asset lineup. If they had too much hospitality and they want more signage, if they had too much display space, then we adjust their packages appropriately.
When it comes to marketing, you've come up with new ticket plans and new ways to attract fans. Are you spending more or less on marketing? Do you have to rethink the way you market the Speedway and the events that are here? Have you changed the scope geographically of where you're advertising?
Sure. Well, anytime you have a drop in attendance like we've had, our board of directors and our shareholders demanded of us that we got to cut expenses. So we have shown some cutbacks in some of our media spending, but on the other hand, we've also learned hey, the phone used to ring and people used to renew their tickets pretty easily. We've changed that around. We're calling them, we're on the streets, so we've got a bigger sales staff than we used to have going out on the streets, knocking on doors. And of course, we're learning the efficiencies of the internet and how we can really sell tickets on the internet, which is a lot less expensive than the old time, hey, watch a TV commercial Sunday, type stuff that used to go on. So we're finding new ways in direct mail and quite frankly, doing these types of interviews and getting the word out. Anything we can do, we'll take advantage of.
Oh, that's great.
Free publicity.
Yeah, this is completely free. Robin Bragg, president of the Daytona International Speedway. Thanks for being with us today.
Oh, it was great. Thank you.
Nice to see you. Buddy, the Daytona International Speedway is the mecca of the sport. It holds a special place. How are the other tracks around the country faring?
Well, it's a problem that every track around the country is going to have to be trying to figure out. How do we get the fans in the stands? Now, you've got some tracks like he mentioned, Michigan, that's going to have a tremendous time putting fans in the stands up there. They'll have a big corporate presence because of the automakers being there, but the fans in the stands is going to be a big issue. Tracks like Pocono, where fans have to really drive to get there, that's not in a big metropolitan area. They're going to have to try to create ways to get fans to make it more affordable for them to be able to be there. But even the tracks that are in the big cities are still going to have to try to convince the locals to come out because people can't travel like they used to get to races.
Great. Buddy, thanks for joining us today. NASCAR is the governing body of racing. The organization doesn't own any tracks or race crews, but they're having a major impact on the economics of the sport. Ed Hyland went directly to NASCAR to ask about rule changes and creating economic parity on the track.
I'm here with Ramsey Poston, the Managing Director for Communications for NASCAR here at NASCAR headquarters in Daytona Beach. Ramsey, thank you so much for joining us on Money Talks America.
My pleasure.
Ramsey, talk a little bit about how NASCAR, as the steward of the sport, is really being affected by the economic downturn.
Well, one thing with ourselves and just the NASCAR employees ourselves, obviously, we're tightening our belts, we're affected just like everyone else. So we've been smarter with the way we've spent money on our budgets in terms of travel and personnel going to tracks, and like the rest of America, we're finding ways to do more with less.
Now, part of what you've been doing has always been geared toward parity on the track. We mentioned in our earlier conversation, making it exciting for the fans, keeping the real theme, if you will, of racing going, and you're working hard to make sure that the crews themselves aren't having to spend a lot of money, cutting back on testing some other areas.
Yeah, that's exactly right. One of the big initiatives we had this year was to suspend all testing for the year. Normally, teams would have somewhere between 7 and 10 organized tests and do a lot of testing on their own. This year, we put a ban and prohibition of any testing of any kind at NASCAR-related tracks. This, at the end of the year, will save teams about $1 million per year. So that's been a big cost savings. Also, our new car. We introduced a new chassis, which teams can develop and make for much less than they did before. Typically, before this new car, teams would have about 18 to 22 cars in their inventory to race throughout the year. That's a lot of sheet metal, it's a lot of cars to have there. With this new car, teams can get through a year on about somewhere between 12 to 14 cars. So fewer cars, it's a more flexible car, can race. The same car can be raced at a short track and a large track as well. So that's important flexibility for the teams.
And trying to put some balance between the teams as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we love parity. We're never scared about saying that. And the thing that makes NASCAR racing so popular and the most popular form of racing in America is that side-by-side racing. Our fans, that's what brings fans to it, and that's what keeps them watching on TV and puts them in the stands. That along with our drivers' personalities as well.
Now, obviously the tracks are independently run away from NASCAR, but at the same time, you have to be concerned about sponsorships. How is that being? How's the economy affecting your sponsorship areas?
What sponsors have realized is that they, even in this tough time, they too have to tighten their belts, but they also have to market their product. And there's no better way of doing that than NASCAR. Every week on television, there's an average of 10 million fans who are tuning in. We're still averaging well over 100,000 fans at the track. So this is a great vehicle for sponsors to be able to show their products and sell their products to America. It's very important to them.
Talking to Robin Bragg at the Daytona Speedway and talking to you as well, one thing seems to be gelling that the fans are coming to expect more value and also trying to get more entertainment perhaps out of that value. One of the things that's going on literally behind us here at NASCAR headquarters is a whole complex that is going to be fan devoted. You want to get into that one a little bit? You're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, aren't you?
Absolutely. We expect to move into the new building at the end of this year, and this building will house ISC, NASCAR, and Grand Am Racing. So this is going to be a bright, new, shiny headquarters for everybody. It is a green building. It'll qualify for LEED certification. So we're all very proud of that. And then the next phase after that, there will be more retail space for our fans and for the Daytona community, which is important. We always have been part of this community. This is where our headquarters is, and we really love being here in Daytona. As this complex gets developed, we're very proud of what it's going to mean for everyone here.
So you're not concerned that the slowdown, the recession is going to potentially drive away fans?
No, we certainly haven't seen that. Fans are still coming to the races. Part of it is the tracks are doing a remarkably good job, Robin Bragg and others, in creating ticket packages. Just like any good merchandiser, they might be coming up with deals. Some of them are food packages, some are family packages, but that's really working. And
now, can you help them with that? I mean, is there a connection there at all that you can help
Not
them?
really. What we can do is help continue to promote the sport. So we'll continue to work with drivers to get the drivers to work with the tracks to sell tickets. That's really important.
Now, where do you see this coming out, if you will? Right now, it's a slow time.
Yeah.
Do you have predictions? Do you have a time frame when you think that things are going to get back to normal as far as your base is concerned?
Well, if I did, I expect President Obama might hire me to be on his economic team. I don't know if anyone knows exactly when we'll all come out of this. But what we've seen is the fans are continuing to stay in there. NASCAR continues to be an important vehicle for them, for their family vacations and to get away. And so this may be a time where a family might be going through a tough time, but at least they still have NASCAR to rely on. They can, what makes NASCAR different than other sports? If you go to a football game, you're talking about a 3 to 4 hour experience. When you go to a NASCAR event, you're talking about a 3 to 4 day event. And it's very family oriented, and you see fans continue to respond to that.
Ramsey Poston with NASCAR, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us here on Money Talks America.
My pleasure, thank you.
And Sean, back to you.
We'll be watching attendance for the upcoming Coke Zero 400 in Daytona Beach and future races across the country. Until the fans' financial situations improve, filling the stands will continue to be a challenge for the racetracks. I'll have some closing final thoughts when we come back. Welcome back. Bernie Madoff has emerged as one of the villains of this financial crisis. His multi-billion-dollar Ponzi scheme came collapsing all around him. Bernie had a house here in Florida, and Florida itself has been running its own Ponzi game. For years, we relied on gaudy rates of population growth to power the economy forward. All these new residents needed places to live, and the construction industry boomed. Thanks to the stock market crisis and the downturn in the economy, Florida's population growth has ground to a near standstill. This has had severe implications for the economy and for financing government. Without that gaudy population growth, some weaknesses have been revealed. Without those new Floridians arriving each day to help us pay the bills, we're finding ourselves in a terrible budget crisis. We're going to have to look to the future for other ways to grow the economy. We can't count on this Ponzi game any longer. I'm Sean Snaith. Thanks for joining us.
Waiting by the side of the road for day to break so we could go down into Los Angeles with dirty hands and worn out knees. Ooh, I keep crawling back to you. Ooh, I keep crawling back to you. The ranger came